What is a star?
A star is definitely not what we're being told it is in school. A giant ball of gas on fire out in the middle of space. It has not been scientifically proven. It's scientific theory. When I was assigned to the research vessel, there were expeditions to the sun to where probes were shot into the sun. And they would shoot these probes into sunspots.
Well, the first thing would be, how do you get a probe into the sun without it burning up?
Energy fields around,
Oh, okay.
the probes.
So a very high intensity energy field that shields it from being burned up.
Right. And also collapsed from the
Gravitational, right.
What was seen from the telemetry that came back from these probes was amazing. The sun is electric. The people that are talking about the electric plasmic model of the universe, they're correct.
But that model usually excludes torsion fields.
Yes, it does. There's some stuff that needs to be, some information that needs to be married.
Right.
But there's obviously torsion fields are involved in not only the stars, the planets, the galaxy, and as I said before, I was shown that our entire universe is a giant torsion field. What is the solar sneeze? I saw in the smart glass pad how they had talked about it was going to be a massive 360 degree full mass coronal ejection. And also in the papers, they were thinking, some people were postulating that it was just going to be this major just energy pulse. And then people were going to turn into light bodies. There are all these different ideas about what's going to happen. According to the Anshar, what they showed me when I was sitting in one of the egg-shaped chairs and they were showing me their history, they showed me the sun explode. And when it exploded, it kind of exploded in an oblong way around the equators where most of it exploded out and then some out from close to each pole. And it was just huge waves of plasma coming in. The animation, it shows fire, but it was huge plasma clouds coming in. And we'll see in the animation later, I'm skipping ahead a little bit. I was sitting here and I was in the chair, and it was funny because the earth was hovering above my knees and the sun was over here, and then the moon was moving and it was up here, and then there was a flash, and then all of the plasma that I mentioned you see leaving, and then it hits the moon, and then it hits the earth, and it hits the earth spins like maybe 20 degrees. It spins, and where it hit, there's a circle where it punches through the atmosphere, and it looked like it was above Europe and partially above the Pacific, and it was like a hurricane of fire that went down, and it boiled the water and burned the land in this one area, but it didn't destroy, it wasn't this huge destruction like they depict on Knowing or some of these sci-fi movies where the earth is just completely destroyed. But there were some pretty rough side effects.
Scientific statistics says there's a 1 in 8 chance every decade for a super solar storm.
So we're long
The
overdue.
last kill shot solar storm we had was 1921. That's 95 years ago. And the one before that was only 60 years earlier, the Great Carrington event. So both of those happened before we had the grid's Achilles heel. We didn't have a big grid in those days. Now we have these giant transformers that are going to blow in a super solar storm, and they take 1 to 3 years to replace them.
It could be a destruction of our power grid that could literally throw us back into medieval level technology.
When South Africa lost 14 transformers in 2003, I believe it was, it took them a full year to replace those 14. Now, we're not talking about 14, we're talking about 350 or more in the United States alone, a couple thousand in the world. That's 20 years of manufacturing capacity if the world's working well, and it won't be, to replace all those transformers. So you're talking a single storm in a day or two, what it would take 20 years working full time to replace. So we're talking a really serious situation where it'll be months before things are even limping along. And in that time, a lot of people will starve, and a whole bunch of nuclear power plants are going to melt down, and there's going to be chaos in the streets for a very long time.
One of the biggest concerns I have is a solar flare eruption. The result is going to be an electromagnetic pulse and a widespread grid outage. You're going to have chaos and mayhem in the streets. The stores in the cities will be looted in a matter of days. I don't think it's going to be long for people to start coming out into the outskirts to do anything they can to survive. And that includes robbing or hurting or even killing other people. They'll eat each other if they have to.
Steve.
Hey, Scott, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Welcome to the plant, man.
Thanks a lot.
Steve Willis works as a general contractor, but he's clocking overtime as a prepper.
My worst fear is that people come here, they rape my wife, they kill my kids. I don't know what I would do if any harm was to befall my family. That's my main concern as a father, as a husband, as a grandfather. Dig in. I need to know that those kids are gonna be okay. Autumn, eat over your plate, sweetheart, okay?
Give me an idea exactly what you want so that we get it.
Well, this thing has to be an underground fortress. You know, my biggest concerns are the electromagnetic pulse threat. You got the solar flares, all that stuff is gonna happen at some point.
An electromagnetic pulse is caused by a high altitude nuclear blast or a solar flare coming through our atmosphere. When an EMP hits, it can take out the electrical grid for an extended period of time.
Another concern I have is being able to see, like, outside from inside the bunker. The element of surprise is what I'm looking for.
You want to be able to see outside, and there's no electricity. I got this crazy idea to build a video periscope, but it's kind of tricky because I got to make sure when I build it, it's EMP resistant. I'm sure we can figure something out.
So why did they pick a sunspot and not some other place?
Well, the telemetry from the inside of our star, Sol,
SOL is what they call it.
is what it's referred to.
Right.
There was a core that was fairly small, and they could tell it was made up of magnesium, sodium, I can't remember all the elements, and the outer...
Mostly metallic?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the outer shell was made up of similar materials, but it was like an anode and cathode.
Okay.
So it was an electrical, almost like a light bulb. And the sunspots were going into the center of the sun like vortex filaments streaming into the center of the densest part in the middle of the star. Tiny, thin little tornado spirals and crisscrossing each other, spinning around, crisscrossing each other, and going and meeting down to the small center. In the programs, a lot of the nuts and bolts people thought this is it, it's going to be the end of all civilization, all technology, everyone's going to die. Some of the others believed that it was going to transfer everybody immediately into light bodies, we're going to fly around and read each other's minds, it's going to be awesome. Yeah. And then others believed it was just going to be the start of some golden age somehow. Some were going to try to create a golden age through technology and AI, and the others thought it was going to go the spiritual way. But when it comes down to it, the truth is somewhere in between. One of the things Mika told me was that out of all the local 52 stars, how many of those, out of those local 52 stars, how many of them do you think everything unfolded just like in their religions and prophecies. None, not one. There were similarities, there was information that helped each of them prepare, but none of them were exactly like how they had been told in prophecy. And I think we can expect the same.
War, pandemic, economic turmoil, natural disaster, terror attack, false flag, or real. In our modern times, these are all very real reasons to prepare for times of crisis. This list, however, is excluding the worst case scenario, which is also the most likely to occur. EMP, or an electromagnetic pulse. Whether such a disaster is caused by a terror attack or nature, the results will be unimaginable. No lights, no appliances, your cell phone will not work, and your car isn't going to start. Worst yet, the power will not be turned back on for at least an entire year. The spread of the damage will cover almost the entire Western continent. That's no lights, no heat, no refrigeration, and no plumbing. Society will ultimately break down. How can you and your family survive such a disaster? In the next few moments, we will explore these questions. We asked survival experts Joel Skousen, Matthew Stein, and James Wesley Rawls to join us and briefly explain the most important things every American must know to stay alive during the most unthinkable of times. What will it look like?
Well, I think for most people, it'll simply be a matter of a blackout, and then they'll go to check their radios and find that nearly all of the radio stations are off of the air.
All media, all electronics, and power from the grid will go down. You won't have any electricity anywhere, and you'll turn on your television. You won't see anything. You won't hear anything on the radio. And that's, so it will be very clear that this is a widespread electrical outage.
It'll all go down at once.
You can kind of figure on people being fairly peaceable for a day or two, and then the looting will happen and everything will be gone from the shelves after the looting gets started. Like within a day, it'll probably be pretty much wiped clean. But you can pretty much expect chaos to be running in the streets.
What makes a bunker a tactical bunker is a bunker that can actually defend itself against predators. Keep people out that shouldn't be in.
Let's do it.
All right, man.
All right, bro.
Thanks.
Most of Scott's bunkers are huge underground condos meant for long-term living. Since Steve plans on using his bunker only while his property is under attack, he doesn't need luxuries. So they're keeping it basic. Retractable bunk beds, storage space for food and water, 100-amp electric service, and a generator hookup for emergencies. Build time, 3 weeks. Total cost, $50,000.
Charlie, you got a minute? My guys are slammed with work, but they've never built a tactical bunker before. We got another cool project.
I ain't got time for more projects, dude.
I know. Steve Willis wants a tactical bunker, real basic in the inside, but defensive to keep people from getting to his food, house, wife, kids, the whole deal. That's right up both your
That'd be
alley.
fun.
Yeah. This is a present for you, and we
Thanks.
got to get it built pretty quick.
Okay.
I like challenging my guys with stuff like this. It makes them get creative, and it keeps them on their toes.
The guys waste no time and start cutting the 10-gauge steel for the tactical bunker.
And most of the bunkers that we do is almost like a house. You get a small kitchen, a small little bathroom, but we're not doing any of that stuff. We're putting all tactical stuff in it. Once we get into it and start tricking it out, it's going to be a lot of fun. Tack it! Once we're done with this thing, nobody's going to get into it. It's almost going to be like a tank.
Well, it does make sense because a lot of times when we're looking at sunspots, we see actual rings burst out of the sun, tubes of energy. It's called a solar prominence. And you have this ring come out. And so you're saying that that's not just on the surface, that those go way down right to the core.
Right to the core.
Wow.
And these are also, at times, depending on the sun's behavior, stargates that are utilized by different extraterrestrial groups. to go in and out of our solar system. And there was a wide open empty area inside the sun. Now there is a very large area outside, on the outside of the area I've described, that is molten and on fire. And they found out that it's hotter on the outside of the sun and cooler on the inside. The sun or soul is being fed by some sort of waves that are hitting it. And that is what is causing the outside to be so active. And also, it is being fed through what I described as the cosmic web. Each sun, each star is connected to every other star through this cosmic web. And each one is connected through a filament, electromagnetic filament that we were describing, that connects each star. So things can happen in one solar system to one star, and there can be feedback through the system, this network, that can affect our solar system star. Now, okay, we've heard the solar sneeze, a lot of us have. Is this solar event, is it related to the transition of densities? Absolutely. The cosmic web and these electromagnetic filaments, as a star is traveling through these energetic, basically gases, it causes something similar to friction within their magnetic field. And the energies begin to feed in through the north and south poles of each star. And the energy enters the star and then leaves through the surface of the star to feed back into the rest of the solar system. So as we are moving more and more through this energetic area of our galaxy, more and more of these energies are feeding in through the sun and being pushed out to the different planets. Those energies are changing the vibration. So yes, it has a direct effect on these densities, and it's a part of the process that every star system goes through.
The immediate effects are going to be profound. That's the area where you're going to have cars that won't start, for example, if they have electronic ignition systems.
It is sufficient to understand that with long power lines lacing the country, these absorb this electromagnetic energy as if they're great big antennas, and they send huge power surges down the power lines, which ends up frying any equipment that is plugged into the electrical power system. And this surge occurs in 1 to 2 nanoseconds, which means lightning protection. Those types of clamping shunt type protectors will not work in an EMP. It's much faster than that, and the surge will get through. So special equipment is needed to protect against EMP.
Anything connected to the power grid, the internet itself will be gone, most radio broadcasts will be out. And of course, then the whole cascade of events will take place because we're going to be without power and without automatic ordering systems, without a lot of controls over key infrastructure, which depend on the internet, the power grid, and the phone system.
You have to have your 3 Bs together, your beans, your bullets, your Band-Aids, meaning that you have to have food stored up. You have to have first aid. There's going to be no pharmacies you can go to. You can't call doctors. You have to have a good survival library put together. And then the protection, to know that there's going to be, there's a heavily armed populace in the United States. There's a lot of people who won't be prepared. And so you need to be prepared to defend yourselves, and you need to have strategic partners. By that, I mean that no one can be awake 24/7. And you're much stronger in numbers.
You must be Shay.
You must be Scott.
Hey.
Prepper Shay DeGan is a former cop and a master military tactician. He's been stockpiling weapons and supplies for years.
If shit hits the fan or you can't protect yourself, you're in trouble. You've got some issues.
Today, Shay's taking his prep to the next level.
So what are the most important things that you're looking for in a bunker?
Obviously, I want to have a lot of the similar amenities that you would have in a house. Sleeping quarters, a living area. I want to make certain that I can protect my family. I've got a wife and 2 kids. My number one priority is to protect my wife and children. When my daughter was born, it wasn't about me anymore. I will go to great lengths to protect my family. People get desperate, they do desperate things. Homes are broken into. Businesses are looted. Chaos ensues. You aren't a prepper, you don't have the things in place to protect yourself and your family, you're in trouble. You have civilized folks that can turn uncivilized very, very quickly, become survival of the fittest. So this is where the bunker is going to be placed, which is really, it's ideal. It's next to the house for protection piece of the family, and then it's also close to the classroom.
Clients call us with crazy ideas all the time. Shay is actually going to show people where his bunker is. You can't get any more crazy than that. I can already see right now that we are going to have to put one hell of an engineered door in this thing because everybody's going to know where it is. And the shit hits the fan.
Right.
They're coming for your bunker. I don't care what you've trained them. They naturally are going to come right to the bunker. The door has got to be able to stop trained guys from getting through it.
Well, that's why I'm relying on you, Scott.
So once we see this flash occur, you're saying that positive beings of some kind come in and make sure that nobody can mess with the process.
Right.
What does that actually look like for the people? How do they trust what's going on? How do they know what this is?
For the most part, they don't know that there's a guardian race that's come in to oversee their process.
Oh.
Yeah, they're oblivious to it. There will be people in their society that will know about it, kind of like Micah knew what was going on. But for the most part, they don't know. They're focused on their planet, on their healing, and making it through this process.
Did Micah's solar system also have these sphere assets come in to help transition it?
They went through the exact same thing that we're going through.
The Anchar, as I just stated what they showed me with the explosion, but when the solar explosion occurred and the energy and plasma interacted with the Earth, there was loss of life, but what occurred was immediately after that, our cosmic cousins came in and rendered aid. So the state of, I'm going to get much more in depth about this later on, but the state of humanity, I think, is what a lot of people are curious about. There was a kind of a split in the way people reacted after this catastrophe and upgrade. The people, I guess like us, that have been preparing and doing the work, we go through trauma, we have to go through a rescue ourselves, but we come out of it with a completely different understanding. This consciousness is this ascension is a consciousness shift. And when our consciousness goes through this shift, we see everything from a completely different way. All of our problems we see from different angles. We connect with each other in a different way because we start to understand oneness, how we are all one, and how we can communicate easier when you understand the full concept of oneness. And then we begin to kind of pull together and assist each other and work with the non-terrestrials.
So do you think the U.S. government, do they need to do more to protect, the power grid and our infrastructure? Have they done enough?
No, they haven't done enough. They've protected military infrastructure,
Of course.
but they really need high capacity, very strong surge protectors, the EMP, less than 1 nanosecond surge protectors on the entire grid, and they don't have that.
The investment required to upgrade the infrastructure of our power grids, for example, in the phone system, would, yes, be in the range of in the billions of dollars to do. But compared to what we spend every year on welfare, it would be a drop in the bucket.
No, it's probably less than the banker bailouts.
Oh, far less.
Yeah.
Far less. It's important to also have a solar battery charger. Even if you can't afford a whole house system, you would at least have a small 5 or 10 watt panel and a battery charging tray so that you can recharge all your crucial electronics. And that would be things like flashlights, your portable radios, your night vision equipment, and your push-to-talk radio gear for retreat security. You're going to have to be able to communicate with your neighbors. So you want to have some walkie-talkies.
The first line of defense is to put on what's called a whole house shunt protector. And there are a few companies that do put out this equipment. Transtector, for example, is a military contractor, which will sell to the public.
Go off-grid. If you have the wherewithal to set up your home for photovoltaic power, go ahead and do so. But make sure that it is not a grid-tied system. It needs to be a standalone system.
Well, I'd say the absolute most important thing is to be planning for the grid being down for a really long period of time. That you just know the government's not planning ahead. They're not going to watch out for you.
All of your spare electronics should be stored in galvanized steel trash cans with a tight-fitting lid. All you need to do is bundle them up in something to insulate them from the can itself. Just plastic wrap works fine. And seal the lid of that can. You do not need to ground the can to an earth ground. In fact, it's actually worse in the case of EMP to ground it because you're making an unintentional antenna by doing so.
Shay's bunker needs to hold 4 people for up to 6 months. Scott decides on a 3-unit bunker complex with over 1,100 square feet of underground space, a living room and full kitchen, storage for over 6 months of food, and a sleeping wing with a full bathroom. Total cost, $450,000.
To live underground, there's a bunch of stuff you have to have. Clean air, water, and a solid septic system. Shay's bunker gets fresh air through a nuclear, biological, chemical filter.
The sewage will be collected in underground tanks, and for fresh water, Shay's property holds a major advantage.
Shay's bunker has an underground well that's dug 700 feet down to an aquifer under the earth. He'll have water forever.
This hyperdimensional mathematics model that was handed down to us that we use to calculate portal travel. With every star and planet and galaxy having a relationship with each other, you have to be able to calculate these things because you can have weird little hiccups that can cause weird things like what you were talking about in that experiment. It unifies basically all of these different scientific principles that our mainstream science has problems with. And until our mainstream science drops their theory and begins to embrace the fact that the universe is a plasmic electric universe and a torsion universe, both are true. These are the sciences that the secret space program bases their technology off of. They're not going to progress any further than we are now using this 18th and early 19th century technology.
When they sent these probes through the sun, did the probe go somewhere else, or was it just that they mapped the interior out like that?
It mapped the interior out, sent back telemetry until it succumbed to the forces inside the sun. It was basically a little suicide mission for this probe.
Right.
It was meant to go in, gather data, and send back telemetry as long as it could.
Even places like Denver Airport were really constructed, I believe, around this solar flash. So it's in the center of the country, giving everybody equal access and time to get there. And then the trains go down and take them right into the mountains where they're safe from the solar flash. If you go to the Denver Airport, there's these 4 very disconcerting murals. And one of them has whole world on fire, and all of these extinct animals, like the sea turtle that went extinct a few years ago, and 3 coffins, a black child, a white child, and a Native American child in a coffin, dead. And what does that mean? You know, what does it mean? And you really have to wonder, because the whole Denver airport looks like a Freemasonic temple. There's a plaque, and there's this, you know, and you're wondering what this is really about. And I really think it is about that. I think it's about the sun.
Are you aware of there being a base under the Denver airport?
Well, yes, yeah, there's a base and a tram system that connects to other bases.
And did that have something to do with this continuity of government plan?
There's a continuity of government, continuity of species.
Wow.
Okay.
And again, when I came out about the Denver airport 15 years ago, I was on Nori, and I said that it was part of COG, and everybody, what's COG? You know, what's COG? What's he talking about? Right? And everybody said, there is no such thing as continuity of government. Widener's crazy. And then after 9/11, Cheney came out, and why are you moving Bush all around the country? So it was all part of COG. And he said the word COG. I was like, there he is. He admitted that. There's continuity of government, you know?
And Steve Willis's tactical bunker moves closer to completion.
The bunker is going to be the anchor of my defense system. People will do anything and everything, trying to loot stores, kicking down doors to apartments and houses. And if you're in the way and you're standing between them and a means of survival, it's not going to be pretty.
A bunker is just like a submarine. You can't see anything. So you have to put a periscope in there to see up over the bunker to see who's coming to get you. First thing we got to do for the Willis Tactical Bunker is get this camera in this tube.
All right.
I'm using Kenneth, my engineer. He's a fellow nerd just like me, and it'll be perfect for us to do this project together. 1, 2, 3, 4, boom! Video. With a regular periscope, it's very old technology. You push it up, you're looking through mirror, all the way to the top. They can fog, they can crack, and you can't see at night. That's why we're doing a video periscope. This battery will last at least a week or 2 because it's not drawing that many amps. And then this solar panel right here, we're gonna use this to charge that battery, and Steve's gonna keep this in the bunker because obviously if a solar flare or EMP come, this thing's gone. Normally, a solar flare would fry electronics, especially if it was a big one.
To protect Steve's periscope from an EMP, Scott's creating a Faraday cage which deflects radiation, similar to what's found inside a microwave oven. The wires are wrapped in metal mesh, which is placed inside a steel conduit and insulated with a combination of foam, tar, and metal shavings, all contained within a PVC pipe. With the battery, solar panel, and electronics safely inside the bunker, this periscope is EMP resistant.
Boom. Yeah, there we go. Night vision. Yeah.
Look at the insulation flying around in there.
Yeah, looks like snow.
And now, we just have to put the wires together, foam it, and put it in the bunker.
We got it. Very nice.
While Scott works on giving the bunker eyes outside, Jesse and Charlie are giving it a tactical advantage over predators.
Consciousness is on this one kind of vibe. And then at that point, we begin to feel other groups, like we discover the Anshar deep in the earth. And then the Anshar come and visit us at that point, openly. And then it's very hard to describe about how timelines just kind of collapse together. Our present and their future just kind of comes together. When they're openly contacting us and they have technology 20 million years in the future, all of a sudden now we're 20 million years in the future if we meld with them. So that's a massive jump that can occur. And that massive jump causes another massive jump in consciousness. And this consciousness renaissance we go through is pretty crazy, but it does happen over generations, according to the Anshar and their past.
First up, the steel delivery.
This is the steel for Shay's bunker. It's about 100 grand worth of material.
There's 45,000 pounds of metal on this truck, enough to build 4 fully armored Humvees. Scott Free is in charge of the unload.
I'm the only man for this job.
Scott Free is our main forklift driver. He's been driving a forklift probably since they've been invented, and that's pretty scary. The guys in the plant know when he's driving that thing around to get the hell out of the way.
Scott Free's probably gonna mess something up, so we'll see what happens.
This is a lot of steel.
I've unloaded steel trucks like this, and it's not easy.
Not center.
Especially if you can't find the center. Even when you measure it, sometimes you can't find the center. Some parts of the steel weigh more than the others.
One more.
It's really hard to get it perfect, but it looks like he has it now.
How we doing?
Doing good.
Who's got one sheet left on here?
Yeah, it's a big sheet.
Big floor right here. 1/4-inch plate steel. Last piece, but it's the toughest one, probably 4,000 or 5,000 pounds. But it's so long, I can't pick it up the way I did the other ones because it droops too much. So we got to pick it up with an I-beam, and then the truck driver is just going to pull out, and we'll set it on the ground. We're an accident waiting to die. We got in 45,000 pounds of steel. The next step is to get it into the building, start cutting it, start measuring it.
While the floor team starts cutting and grinding the bunker's steel shell.